Welcome to the Fitness Industry Success Show. Ideas, inspiration, and interviews to take your fitness business to the next level. With over 23 years of fitness industry experience and the founder of LEADLION, an innovative fitness marketing agency, here's your host, Nick Parker.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the Fitness Industry Success Show, where you can learn from amazing guests like we have today to take your fitness company to the next level. So I'm very excited about today's episode. We have a very special guest for you, Shawn Stewart, who has really an extensive fitness industry background. If you don't know who he is yet, you will by the end of the show, but I want to give a quick introduction to who Shawn is. Shawn has been in the industry for a long time, and when he was studying exercise and sports science at the University of Florida, he's a Gator, he began his career in the fitness industry in '94 at Gainesville Health and Fitness, which is a really popular chain up in the Gainesville area. He quickly discovered his passion for value-based leadership, which I've heard him spoke on leadership many times, and he's amazing at that, and the power of company culture. Shawn is also both an accomplished speaker, educator, and health and fitness industry expert, and he's really involved in the community as far as educating professionals all over the world. Well, after 20 years in Gainesville and serving as the GM for all the Gainesville Health and Fitness facilities, Shawn became the COO for O2 Fitness, which is based in Raleigh, North Carolina. He oversaw the operations of 28 clubs and the acquisition of 7 additional clubs and the construction of 8 new clubs. So a lot of growth there. But in 2019, Shawn took the plunge. He went to the dark side. So he started CSS Fitness Holdings, which is a legal company name for his passion to pursue his commitment in the fitness industry through club ownership and targeted consulting. So in June 20, Stewart acquired his first club, Fuel Fitness, in Mooresville, North Carolina. And today Fuel Fitness has 3 locations and growing, and several on the way throughout North and South Carolina. Shawn, thank you so much for being on the show today. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm so glad that you're here today. So we're going to talk about leadership in just a few minutes. You have a really amazing story. We're going to talk about a lot of leadership principles. I know you're going to drop a lot of, for those of you listening and watching on YouTube right now, he's going to drop a lot of golden nuggets and some bombs on you today. So make sure you're paying attention. But before we do that, I would love our audience to get to know you by playing 2 truths and 1 lie. So you up for a little game?
Sure.
All right, great.
Sure.
So the premise of the game is this. You're going to tell us 2 things about you that are true, 1 that is a complete lie in no particular order, and I have to guess which one is the lie.
Okay. I have been to all 50 states. I have been detained by the Secret Service as a threat to the president.
This just got really interesting.
And I used to be a Disney character.
I don't know if I've ever had one harder than this. So I'm gonna, I'm gonna have to guess threat to the Secret Service. Or detained by the Secret Service as a threat to the president as the lie. Is that correct?
That is incorrect.
Wow. So, okay. Can we dive into this for a second? Well, you got to tell that story.
Sure. It was actually the 1994 Final Four, University of Florida's first time ever going. My sister was on the dance team at the time and got us tickets. I was actually close to here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And in the Final Four that year was Arkansas. And at the time, President Clinton was a big fan. And I was still in high school at the time. And I was going around taking pictures of all the celebrities and all the coaches that were in the audience. And I wiggled my way through the security because I wanted a picture of the president, and his daughter Chelsea was there at the time. And this is back before there were phone cameras, so I had an old school disposable camera, and I went to go step up and take a picture, but because I was reaching for something in my pocket, I got swarmed by the Secret Service. And they pulled me aside and detained me for a minute, and they realized I was harmless.
Yeah.
They let me go pretty quickly.
What a great story. So have you been to all 50 states, or were you a Disney character?
I was a Disney character.
Which one?
So that's the game I've been playing with people for 25 years, is guess which Disney character I was. And I've never told anyone. I allow people to guess, and I will let you get one guess, and I allow you to know if you were correct or not. And so far, no one's got it.
Okay, got it.
Because I was in high school, and it was a little part-time gig that I did for a girl I was dating at the time who was on the dance team, and they used to get jobs at Disney all the time. And sometimes the boyfriends would tag along, and we would get gigs. And one of them was a Disney character for a couple days.
Okay, so I get one guess on that. I'm gonna guess. Wow, I don't even know. Is Peter Pan even a Disney character? I'm gonna guess Peter Pan.
Peter Pan. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Again, this was in the early to mid 90s.
Okay.
Some of the most more popular guesses, like Aladdin and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was trying to go with something that wasn't as obvious.
So, it's not.
That's why I knew it was going to be more obscure. So
at Ursa, maybe I'll whisper in your ear.
Sweet. All right, I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to hold you up on that. Well, let's dive in. We've got
real quickly. I've only been to 49 of 50 states.
You've been to 49 out of 50?
Yes.
Wow.
Quick story there. Every summer, our family, my dad would take a section of the U.S. and for 3 or 4 weeks, we would travel that section and get to know the culture of each state, the history. My parents used to talk with the teachers of the upcoming school year to see what we would be learning in American history, and they were tied along with that. And so by the time I was out of middle school, I had visited 49 of the 50 states. And,
wow.
Yet to make it to Alaska. We were scheduled to go on an Alaskan cruise last month, or a couple months ago, for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. And that was going to check off the last state for me. But it obviously got canceled with everything that's been going on. So we just had a little shindig for them for their 50th.
That's pretty cool.
Instead of the cruise.
Yeah, congrats to them. That's awesome. And that's pretty neat that you were by middle school at 49 of the 50 states. That's really impressive. I don't know how you did that, but that's incredible. Wow. Well, I'm sure you learned some leadership lessons there just traveling, even before then, before you even hit high school, you learned a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm really excited to dive into your story today. The reason is because everyone's story is unique and it's very different for everybody. But yours is one that a lot of people will be able to relate to with going from being a really strong leader and a great operator, working for someone else, to owning your own facilities and the transition to the entrepreneurship world, which I called the dark side earlier. And then I would love to learn some of the highs and lows and kind of, the leadership lessons that you've learned from that, because let's be honest, the entrepreneurship can really beat you up and it can be challenging. It can be tough. So there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of second guessing. You can almost feel kind of crazy at times. So I would love to later on dive into that. So for the sake of time though, if you could, for those not familiar with your story, just give us where it all started and kind of the fast version of that, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I started off, like you said, at Gainesville Health Fitness Center in August of '94. I was a freshman in college at the University of Florida. My sister, who was a senior at the time at the University of Florida in pre-law, was working for Joe Cerulli at Gainesville Health Fitness, and she hired me. I was living that 1 year that we were together. I was living with her, And she had said, if you're going to be living with me, you're going to get a job, and we need some help for odd jobs and cleaning, cleaning the club and doing some instruction, and all kind of started from there. Like most college students, it wasn't my original path. It was just a part-time job, but it is very easy for those of you who know about Gainesville Health and Fitness and Joe Cerulli about what it means to be part of a culture, to be part of a brand, to be part of something bigger than yourself, and really buying into a culture, a vision, a mission. And as I feel like I got in at the right time, because as I was moving up in the company was in this huge growth mode, and I got to be a part of so much of that growth, as far as really help shaping a lot of the systems, shaping a lot of the core ideology, and spending countless hours in meetings going through that process, which is so core to who I am right now, of developing your culture, your core values, and the things that not everyone buys into, but it's, to me, it's like a constitution. When you have that document in place, it helps guides everything about your organization.
Yep.
And so when I graduated college, I had an opportunity to come on board as or stay on board and be promoted to the general manager of all of the locations in Gainesville.
How long did that take for you to go from, cleaning locker rooms to becoming the GM of all 4 locations? What time period was that?
So I became a supervisor, a floor supervisor, after about a year and a half, and I became the equivalent of an AGM, assistant general manager, about a year after that. And then after 3 years is when I got promoted to the GM of one club. And then when I was graduating in college, I got promoted to overseeing all of the operations of all locations.
Wow, that's pretty impressive, because you just walked across and got your diploma, and you're already overseeing 4 really large health clubs in that area. So that's impressive. Kudos to you on that. So you must have been doing something right leadership wise.
Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to, and again, this is what has helped shape my philosophies over the years, is who are your leaders? Who are the people that are willing to help grow and develop you as an individual? And the list is so long. I mean, most people know the Joe Cerulli, but there's so many more people that had a direct impact on who I am today, both personally and professionally. And when it comes to my professional growth, I had a huge learning curve, and it was instilled in me by my mentors, my direct supervisors, and my GM, and that always stuck with me, because when you talk about a culture, there's so many different things you can talk about, but one of the cultures there was a culture of growing and developing people. And the fact that the Danny Stevens and the George Whiteheads and the Jan Maxwell and the countless other people I can mention that took time out of their job, and they did it with an abundance mentality, not a scarcity mentality,
right,
but where by growing and developing people, we're all going to get better. I've always felt like I have an obligation to live up to those same standards.
Yep.
And so when I was now overseeing the entire organization operationally, I always wanted to make sure I not only maintained that level of growth and development of leaders, but continue to build on that. And then the same thing when I left Gainesville, and now that I have my own company, I don't know if there's anything more core to who I am than to make sure we are growing, developing future leaders, not just leaders of pure fitness and not leaders of the fitness industry, but just growing leaders.
Can we talk about growth for a second? Because, and I don't want to go fast forward too much, but you're saying something so interesting to me right now, because I'm a big believer that you should work on yourself and others more than you do on the business, because then it'll take care of itself. And you're talking about, the scarcity mindset versus the abundance mindset. and growth. At what point or who taught you to really pay attention to your personal growth and the growth in other people? Because that is really instrumental in job satisfaction, feeling like there's a place. People are willing to take less pay if they feel like they're growing personally. So there's so many advantages to that. And I would love to know, at what point in your journey did that really start to turn, and how exactly that was molded?
When I first became a supervisor, it was the first bit of leadership responsibility that I had, where I was responsible for training other team members, hiring them, and helping them grow in the company. Mm-hmm. And when anyone who got promoted to a supervisor position, a leadership position, the GM at the time was a guy named Danny Stevens. Mm-hmm. And first thing he did was he handed me a book, and he said, "You're going to start leadership training next week. I want you to have this book read, and then we're going to break it down chapter by chapter and go through it together." And the book was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Mm. And I have probably read that book a dozen times, maybe more, probably more than that. Because the first time I read it, it was an assignment. It was something I had to do to get through it, to get through the training. But when we started going through it chapter by chapter and really pulling out all the different aspects of each habit and how it applies to business, how it applies personally, how it helps shape the things that we do, I got something completely different out of it. But Nick, here's the thing, is every time I've read that book, I've read it with a different mindset, and I've gotten something completely different out of it. When I was going through some tough times in a relationship, I read it and it completely changed the way I looked at relationships. When I had a tough time going through some investments and side businesses, I read it not from the standpoint of what I was doing at Gainesville Health Fitness, but stuff I was doing on the side had a completely different meaning. And every time I've read it, and I take that same approach with any leadership book. That was the first one. That was the first one that really got me looking at and understanding that leadership is a skill, no different than any other skill. You have to study it. You have to practice it. You have to be held accountable. You have to hold others accountable. It's not something that's just out there by position or title. It is something you have to work at. And I don't know if there's anything I work at more than learning and practicing being a better leader.
That's so rich right there. You said leadership is a skill. So a lot of people believe that if you're not a born leader, that it's just, there's no hope, it can't be developed. But, if you're leading one other person or just a handful of other people, you are a leader by default, and it's an important skill to develop. And you've been leading tons of people over the years. So let's talk about this a little bit more. You're at Gainesville Health and Fitness. You're reading this book, and every time you read the book, it has a different meaning, or you're taking different things out of it because you have a different perspective and you're seeing it through a different lens, which is your growth experience actually taking effect, which I love that. As you're transitioning to the latter months or years of Gainesville Health and Fitness, what was that like? How were you feeling at the time? Were you getting the itch? How did you transition? Kind of walk me through that part of your story.
Sure. So there's always going to be challenges in anything that we do. But what I got to do at Gainesville for 20 plus years, I consider to be my dream job. I figured it felt like I was always overachieving for everything I achieved there. But we were all overachievers. We were all people coming together to do something extraordinary. And obviously it starts with the person at the top and Joe, but it also, like I mentioned, the other mentors and leaders who continuously share things, make it very special. But I went back and forth on the itch of if I wanted to do something else. I loved Gainesville. I was born and raised in Central Florida, so I spent all my life in Florida. I was dating a girl and then later became engaged to someone who she also grew up in Central Florida in Cocoa Beach, and she had finished her. She went to UF undergrad. She went to veterinary school. Then she did an internship, and then she did a 4-year residency at the University of Florida. And when she was ending her residency, I noticed she had made a name for herself. She wanted to stay in academia and work for a university, and she was making a name for herself with her high level amounts of research. And I noticed she was only looking at jobs within the North Central Florida market. And there were some jobs that were coming available elsewhere that she had the ability to excel at. That was much more than what she was looking to do. And I finally just asked her, why are you only looking at this area? And she said, well, I never thought you would want Gainesville and your career. And I finally told her, I said, sweetie, I've spent 20 years in my dream job. It's time for you to go find your dream job. Yeah. And I knew for us to have the flexibility to do that, I would need to start something on my own that would have flexibility for me to live in, pretty much anywhere. And when she got an opportunity at NC State, which is one of the top, she's a large animal veterinarian, and NC State is one of the best large animal programs in the country. She got a great opportunity there, and when it was becoming more and more clear that we were going to be moving to Raleigh, a couple mutual friends of mine and the owner of O2 Fitness, Michael Olander, had connected with both of us and said they had been telling Michael for a while that he needed to bring on someone to run operations. And they, a couple people told me, said, you got a guy, Michael Olander, in your backyard who runs a chain of health clubs, who's desperate for a good operator. You guys need to connect. And I knew of Michael and he knew of me, but we had never met. And so we connected, and one thing led to another, and he brought me on board as a partner and COO of O2 Fitness. And again, it wasn't what I was intending to do initially, but I'm so thankful for that opportunity because I could not be doing what I'm doing now without the 4.5 years experience that I had at O2 Fitness.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you think about that change is extremely difficult. There's a lot of different emotions, even as a really strong leader, even as someone who has a lot of experience in leadership. Can you talk me through maybe some of the mind stuff and some of the emotions that you may have dealt with during that transitional period of your life, moving from Gainesville, uprooting your life, going to North Carolina, and then taking on this whole new role and other people looking at you to lead them, and kind of what that's like from an internal standpoint? Because I know so many people are probably dealing with that.
Absolutely. It was very tough emotionally, and especially personally, because I had just married my wife 2 months before we made the move to North Carolina. So between engagement and then the wedding, getting married, and then moving, there was a lot of changes for me in my life, personally and professionally. It was obviously tough being somewhere for 20 years and being as close as I am, still am, to the people there in Gainesville, and not just Joe, but many others. But I also knew change can be good for all involved. And I believe it was Jack Welch who I remember saying that the mark of a good leader is what happens to a company when they leave. And if it does this, they weren't a good leader. They were a good doer. And most people's ego wants something to fail when they're no longer the ones doing it. Excuse me. And again, that's a very scarcity mentality. But I also knew that the people who I had been working with and grooming and developing, number one, they were ready for the next step. And that was never going to happen until I moved on. Right. And so the 2 or 3 people that had new opportunities, I was so excited for, and they were more than ready for it. And I will be the first one to say, far better at anything that I've ever done, they were far better at. And so that helped ease the transition of knowing not only am I going on to something new, but there's a group of individuals who I cared about that were going to move up and just take the company and continue to do this for me.
Shawn, can I just pay you a compliment real quick? I want to point this out to our audience. Good leaders care. And I'm hearing this in Shawn right now. He's talking about caring about his new wife at the time, how's she going to respond, about her goals. He's caring about the people that he's leaving behind, making sure they're set up for success. Man, Shawn, that is the mark of a true leader right there, is that you actually care. And that's half the battle. And so kudos to you. So I just want to pay you a compliment, because that really shines through as you're telling the story and how much you do care. So congrats on that. But so yeah, please don't let me interrupt you, but continue the story from where we're at. We're at Gainesville, you're making that transition. Maybe there's some nerves, maybe there's excitement, the change has to happen. What happens next?
So we make the move, and my wife couldn't move with me for a couple months. So that was both good and bad. For the first 2 months, when I started O2 Fitness, I was there by myself, which was great because I was all in 24/7 pretty much. And it allowed me to go and focus on what needed to be done in the initial stages before we started looking for where's the best place to live, which area, get to know everything. And we were able to do that together after a few months. And so jumping right into it, all of the nerves that there may have been quickly gets kicked out the door when you understand the scope of what you're getting into, both good and bad.
Right.
And, there was a huge learning curve. And for me, I've always been fortunate, not just locally, but as an industry, to have incredible mentors. And so I really picked the brains and had many conversations with people in the industry who had experience running multiple clubs, multiple markets, multiple cities, multiple states. The Frank Napolitanos of the world, Larry McCaney, I leaned on. The Bricks were people who I leaned on heavily. So that was a big help and really helped focus on, because I wanted to do everything.
Yeah.
And another quick story about my wife. You can probably see behind me, there's a painting of an elephant. This was a wedding gift from her cousin. That's an incredible artist. In every room of our house, there is an elephant, whether it's a picture, a trinket, a statue, because that's my wife's symbol. And it goes back to when she was in her second year of vet school. And for those who don't know, they say vet school is probably the most rigorous of the professional school, much more so than med school or law school. I mean, they're all extremely difficult, and the level of respect that we should all have for people who go through and earn what they do should be sky high. But she's, she didn't think she could do it, and she had a breakdown, and she went home, and her mom told her, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. So that's always been her symbol, and I've loved that so much because of how incredible of a journey she's had and how much respect I have for what she does. I tell that story all the time because I say to myself, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I say it all the time. And I remember sitting there after the first week just being like, okay, let's take the first bite. And let's have this journey that's going to be a lot of bites.
Yep.
And the thing with O2 Fitness is most of the clubs, I think 21 of the 24 that O2 had when I started, they were acquired clubs. And that meant that each club had a different culture, a different system, a different way of doing things. And the philosophy was, if we acquire a club, let's hire a great GM and let's have the GM run it. And as long as he's producing, that's great. But that's one of the things Michael knew, that that was not a sustainable model. And right before I started was the acquisition of 12 clubs, going from 12 clubs to 24 clubs. And so when I took over, not only were there 2 different brands, but there were basically 24 individual companies, 24 individual cultures, systems, and way of doing things. And so I knew the first item was to break everything down and rebuild it as one company, one culture, one systematic approach to doing things. And everything else fell under that. And if it fell outside of that realm, it got put on the back burner. That was not in the quad 2 way of managing my time. And one of the things I did was I went up on the blackboard and I drew a triangle or a pyramid. And I broke the pyramid into 3 levels. And the bottom level, I wrote the word foundation. And I knew we had to establish foundational principles. The things that I had talked about before that are core to not just me, but who we are as an organization, and build a constitution. The middle of the pyramid are systems. And you can't just implement systems. You have to create systems that are built on the foundational principles. Then at the top of the pyramid, I wrote people. And it's at the top because people are the most important. But like the roof of a house, you can't start there. You have to start with the foundation, implement the systems, and then hire not the best people, but the right people that will execute the systems that are built on the foundational principles. So that's where it all started.
That is so good. How long did it take you to come in, start taking that bite of that elephant, which is one of my favorite sayings too, by the way, and then actually seeing the change to where you felt like, okay, we have finally done it. The culture has finally flipped and changed, and we've got uniformity?
I don't know in 20 years in Gainesville if I would ever say we're there.
That's true. Good point.
4.5 years at O2, I would never say we're there. And hopefully 30 years from now, with my current company, I'm never going to say we're there. But you start to notice changes. There's some changes that can happen short term, and then long term, when it talks about the foundational things, you start to notice smaller items. And I would say after about a year and a half was that tipping point where it wasn't me that was having to point out, because I'm probably number one on my list operationally is cleanliness. When people talk about COVID protocols, what am I doing different? Nothing.
Right, exactly.
I've always had COVID protocols in place before I knew what COVID was.
Right.
Obviously, that's a little exaggeration, but it's got to be at that level. And when it didn't take me going into the clubs and pointing things out, and I've got little phrases like clean things. If you're cleaning something that's dirty, it's too late. So we should always be cleaning things that are already clean, and that way they stay clean. And when it doesn't take me going in a club and seeing those things, that's when I know it's there. That's when I know when it comes to how someone deals with a customer. Hearing the stories just start to multiply of members saying, man, I've got to let you know what this team member did for me. And that's when it's kind of a feeling. I'll tell you a quick little story. This is probably within my first 6 months to a year on the job in Gainesville. So I'm a punk kid, freshman in college, hothead, and Gainesville was known for these circuit lines, and these circuit lines had to be manned by instructors, not personal trainers, but instructors that would set the machines based on the card. And it was so popular that there would be people waiting in line that were 20, 30, 40 people deep.
Wow.
That would be waiting to go down these circuit lines. And it was just hopping. And if you weren't, and Joe Cerulli, every employee there wears a shirt and tie. For 20 years, I never showed up to work without a shirt and tie.
Wow.
Clean, whether I was training, whether I was instructor. And so we're all sweating and I remember somebody walking in and a friend of mine who was a member, and I pulled off my section and I started to, hang out and talk with my friend. Well, my section started just getting backed up. And there was another girl in the other section who kept coming over and picking up my slack. And she just kept picking it up, picking it up. And I wasn't noticing it. And I remember her walking over, she tapped me on my shoulder and she said, "I just clocked you out. You can go home now." And so I said, "What are you talking about? You can't do that." She's like, "Well, if I'm going to be doing your job, I don't want you standing here getting paid for it." And I went to and this was not someone who was a supervisor. She was a long time employee, but she wasn't a supervisor at the time. And so I go over to the supervisor, who was also friends with, and I said, "Can you believe what Holly just did? What's this all about?" And he goes, "What did she do?" And I told him, and he goes, "Well, I guess you better go home then."
Boom.
And it wasn't until years later I started sharing that story, because that's when I realized that's culture.
Right.
When somebody has the ability to do that, and the supervisor or manager on duty backs you up, right or wrong,
Wow.
because of where it's coming from.
Yep.
And I remember when I came back the next day, you better believe how much I elevated,
Yeah.
because I was never going to allow that to happen again. And it's just those little things, little by little, that over, quarter of a century, adds up to help shaping hopefully the next phase of my company.
That is so powerful. What an incredible story too. That illustrated so well of when culture drips down through the entire company. Yeah. You don't have to rely on one leadership position to implement all the time. Everyone will do it because it's the culture, it's ingrained. So that's so good. So now here we are at the last final chapter, not the final chapter, but the current chapter. And you decide to go out on your own. So really quickly, I'm an entrepreneur. I've owned 4 companies over the course of my, 25, 27 years, whatever. And it's tough. Owning companies is hard. It is not easy. It's not for the faint in heart. Can you walk me through kind of maybe some of the mental and emotional part of that transitioning before you did it? How do I pull the trigger? Should I do it? And how did you finally talk yourself into going and taking that leap?
Yeah, part of it, because of when I had made up my mind to leave Gainesville to follow my wife wherever she was going to go. I had already gone through the process once and had made the commitment to start my own company, whatever that was going to be. And so that helped. I went back and forth over my 4.5 years in O2, if that was even something I ever wanted to do. It wasn't like that was always out there. There were times when I said, "There's no way in hell I'm going to own my own company," because I had such a respect and appreciation for the 2 people who I've worked for, to see what they have gone through as an owner. And there's too many times where I've said, "Man, I don't want to ever have to go through that." And then there's the rewarding side of it and the next step in your professional career and the challenge. So there's always that constant back and forth. But yeah, there were times where I said, "No, I'm going to be an operator all my life and be happy doing it." But it was the end of 2018 going into 2019. Obviously, with a company the size of O2 and working as closely with the owner, there also comes a time when you always don't see eye to eye. And there's got to be a direction that the owner has to say, "This is where we need to go." And as an operator, my responsibility is to go all in executing that game plan. And if there's any doubt, if it's not something you feel like you can execute, and more importantly, be passionate about and believe in, then that's not a good marriage anymore. And so there were some of those things that were coming up, obviously with a lot of mutual respect, but it was becoming clear that this was something that I didn't want to be in a position any longer to have to execute necessarily something that I wasn't passionate about. And the best way to do that, if you're that passionate about it, is to go do it on your own.
Mm.
And like there's a lot of different philosophies. And yes, there are some right and there are some that are wrong, but most of them are in the middle. They're not right versus wrong. It's just a philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And so going into January of 2019, that's when the discussion, at least with myself and my wife and some close people, I started looking at it. And I originally was looking to leave in April of that year, and was talked out of it from several different arenas. Excuse me. So, and ended up staying on and had given a commitment to the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But by October, it was clear that we both need to go in a different direction.
Yeah.
And I had laid the groundwork to start my own company a few months before, knowing that here over the next 6 to 12 months, it was going to happen. And so in October, when I was fully out, and there was a little bit of a transition period there, I'll tell you this, Nick, for all of November and all of December, I was very flattered with this rush of people who wanted to talk to me, wanted to see if I was interested in joining their organization, running their clubs, from 100+ club chains to high-end mom and pops.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember thinking the whole time, I've been in this industry for, at the time, 25+ years. And I had lost a little bit of the passion for the industry that I had over the previous year.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I wanted to do was just take, 4 to 6 weeks and not think about what the next step is, but I just wanted to get inside of clubs and meet with people in the industry who I have respect for. Some of the people I've mentioned, some others. And that helped me rediscover my passion for the industry. And that's really when I said, okay, I've got a lot of great opportunities over here, but man, that rekindled passion made it clear that it's time to start my own business.
That's
and the other thing I kept saying, and again, even though I love the two people who I've worked for and have a lot of respect, I kept coming back to the same thing. I kept telling myself the same thing every time I talked to somebody about running the organization, and it was, I'm done working for other people. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean it from the viewpoint of, I want to be in control. I want to be in control of the core ideology. I want to be in control of the culture of growing and developing people. I want to be in control where I live.
Mm-hmm.
As my wife continues to grow and she has some amazing opportunities. One popped up at the University of Florida to run the vet school program there. One popped up in a couple of other areas of the country. I want to be in a position where I can continue to support her in her career.
Right.
So all of those things, none of a single one helped me make the decision, but all of them collectively helped me make the decision. And so by February of 2020 is when I put everything together, which, what a perfect time to start a business.
That was probably the worst time, but you couldn't have known. I mean, it was nobody would have known, so yeah. So leading up to that, were you excited? Were you just rearing and ready to go and just emotionally just charged up again and ready to fire?
Absolutely. And I had a couple of key people in place who had worked with me at O2 that, again, without them coming on board, it wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And them and us talking, when you talk about growing and developing people, some people sit around at bars and just talk about BS type of stuff. our circle of people, we sit around and we talk business, and we talk how, investments, and how do we become better leaders, and things that maybe kind of business nerd talk for most. But that's what gets us excited.
Yeah.
I've always said, surround yourself with smart people, and people that have always done that with me. I'm glad that I can help do that for others. But Nick, I am at my best when I'm the dumbest person in the room.
Absolutely.
Because when I'm the dumbest person in the room, I get to listen, I get to
Yep.
learn, I get to ask questions.
Yep.
And so just creating those environments. And so Elliot Hall was someone who was I worked with closely at O2 Fitness. And so we partnered up to help start Fuel Fitness on the first acquisition. I knew anything that we did, we would do together.
Yep.
And again, he's been an integral part in building where we are now. And one of the things that I've shared a few times that kind of help shape Fuel Fitness and CSS Fitness Holdings is I had the opportunity, like when I first went all in and I had that gung ho mentality, I just started writing all the things I wanted to accomplish, all the things I wanted the company to be about. And I bet I had 600 things listed, pages and pages and pages.
Wow.
It just gets so overwhelming that, again, you've got to start with the top 2 or 3.
Yep.
And so make sure the top 2 or 3 are the most important.
Yep.
And one of the things that, probably the biggest aha moment, Nick, is the fact that when I was looking at shaping this, I also thought to myself, I don't have to have it etched in stone based on what I've known and learned, and the way I've done it over the last 25 years, 27 years.
Mm-hmm.
I have a blank canvas, and this blank canvas can help me rediscover new core ideology, new core values, new systematic approaches to doing things, new way of doing things. And so, connecting at industry conferences, connecting at roundtable events, I tell them all the same thing. We have an opportunity to use my business for R&D, both reactively in a post-COVID world, but proactively for shaping who we want to be for years to come. And so that actually eliminated a lot of the things I had written down, because I didn't want to say it's the way I've always done it, therefore that's how Fuel Fitness is going to be.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
That's been very refreshing and very rewarding. And when Elliot and I first took on the club, Mooresville is about 2 hours from where I lived in Raleigh, North Carolina. I live in Raleigh. Mooresville is a suburb of North Charlotte.
Yep.
And there's this beautiful lake called Lake Norman.
Yeah. I've been there.
Lake.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I rented a cabin on the lake for 2 months, and no TV, no distractions. That was our place to live during the week, to break down everything, rebuild it, implement the systems. It just became our think tank. Who we want to be today. And like you mentioned earlier, there was a lot of working in the business, but it was important to me to have that environment that we had time and the focus to work on the business and to shape the next 5, 10, 20 years of Fuel Fitness. And what better place to do that than on Lake Norman? And make sure like everything. I'm not always good at it, and it's something that's always in the forefront of my mind to be better at. But I want everyone to have fun when we're doing these things.
Absolutely. That's part of being an entrepreneur, isn't it? Is the freedom, the flexibility, and that's why you're willing to take all that extra risk, is because you get the blank canvas and you can dictate, the outcomes in the future and all of that stuff. So, well, I had planned on going over with you because I knew you were going to have so much to say that was going to be so good that I didn't want to cut it short. So we're a little bit over, but I want to end with this. What, over the course of your journey, you've learned a lot and you've also shared a lot. What would you say is maybe your top 1 or 2 leadership principles that have just really stuck with you and been kind of monumental in just maybe from an implementation standpoint, or yourself personally? A lot of people that are really trying to focus on growing themselves right now, what would you say are your 1 or 2 top principles?
Number one on my list is make others successful. If you can make others, and I'm not saying put them in a position to be successful. I'm not saying give them the resource and make them hope they do it on their own. It's make others successful. And when you create a culture, when you talk about are leaders born, I do believe leaders are born because everyone is born. And I think
right.
Everyone has leadership potential in them.
Right.
They can choose not to. But when we talk about make others successful, it's a responsibility. Right. It's something that I wear on my shoulders every day and have for the longest time. I have to learn and be better to make others better. Everything about when you bear the responsibility of creating future leaders forces you in a position that you have to do it yourself first at a high level. The second thing, and it's not the sexiest of leadership principles, but it's time management. Again, both of these things I mentioned have been I've learned over the years from great mentors on my own. And when it comes to time management, I believe there's 2 types of time management. There's offensive and defensive. Most people understand defensive time management. That's like a defense that keeps you from going backwards. So you have schedules, you have to-do lists. Offensive time management is a little bit different. It's utilizing time to get ahead. And offensive time management are things like having principles and a vision and a mission. It's utilizing time to set up a culture that, because I've always said I have an open door policy. I don't have an open interruption policy. You can come and talk to me about anything, but there's a process. And investing the time to set up those things will free up so much of your time. Everyone's got the same amount of time. It's a finite resource. But it's successful people who get much more out of their time than others. And the last way of looking at time management, offense versus defense, is also looking at it as the compass versus the clock. A clock tells you where you're at today. A compass tells you where you're going. Compass is offensive time management. Clock is defensive time management.
So good, man. Shawn, thank you so much. This has been, for me, it's been wonderful. I mean, I'm going to be watching this back and taking notes and just really digesting everything that you said. And I know our listeners are going to really just get so much out of this. And I appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you're doing in the fitness industry at large and how you are a huge part of this community, like coming on shows like this and always doing panel discussions and just really being willing to invest in the industry as a whole. So that way a rising tide raises all ships, right? And I can't thank you enough. So thank you again for being here. Maybe we'll connect at Ursha again. And I hope to reconnect with you and share more. This could have gone 3 hours and we still wouldn't have touched the hem of the garment because you have so much to share. It's so good. So good. So thank you.
I appreciate it, Nick. My pleasure. Anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. So remember, the more you know, the more you grow. So like, share, and subscribe to the next level of success in your fitness company. And until next time, we'll see you soon.